Welcome to the 9 to 5 podcast. I'm Elliot,
Hey Elliot, I'm Josh.
and today we're going to talk about old school fi versus new fi. So I'm going to set the stage first of when the fire movement first caught on. The playbook was pretty simple. You cut costs, you save 50 to 70% of your income, you retire early. But is that still the same playbook today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think you and we've discovered the fire movement around the same time, around 2014, 15,
That,
something like that.
that's correct.
And that would have been back in the old school fi days.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Mr. Money Mustache, Brandon from the Mad Scientist, I know Carl from 1500 Days. So many voices followed kind of that path of what we're calling old school fi, right? Pretty cut and dry. Once you were at 25x, pull the parachute cord and off you go.
Yeah. And then do whatever it took to get there. So it's just live on rice and beans and take no vacations and just scrimp as much as you possibly could to get to that number.
Miserly to the very end, right? All in jest, but we want to pose this in a slightly different manner. Is now there are new voices that have joined the Fi community. If you listen to different podcasts like Choose FI, or you've listened to the Pioneers very specifically, they start introducing these new concepts like slow fi, barista fi, fat fi. We have all kinds of different fis these days. So, Josh, what do you think about the introduction of all of these different paths to get to financial independence?
I think they're all pretty beneficial, and I think that it's good that we have some variety now because back then, like you said, it was just the one way was just try to spend as little as possible, increase your earnings, and get to the finish line as quickly as possible. And it didn't serve some people well as they got older and started to reflect on it. They thought that they lost valuable time in their younger years and chased that fire number too aggressively, lost out on some opportunities. And I think that, at least where I would be coming from in this conversation, is that there's still potentially some value in some of those old school fire rules that we shouldn't necessarily throw away completely. I do think that some of the folks that came through that generation have regretted those choices, but I think depending on individual circumstances, that way of chasing that fire number is still beneficial to certain people.
Yes, Josh, this is the way. For all you Star Wars fans out there, yes, I would 100% agree with you. Is just because there are new ways of achieving financial independence, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Is the thing that we know about the financial independence movement and personal finance is that it is personal. And so while one person may embrace the lean fire movement, or the blast from the past would be someone like Jacob Lund Fisker that lives on a very small budget. Then on the other side, we've got these fat fire individuals that want to live on what may seem extreme amounts of expenses to someone else. So we're not here to pass judgment, to each their own.
Yeah, I'll mention what I think was beneficial to me. And I came at this, if we go back to my origin story, I came at this from a place where we were in debt. We came out of some really difficult situations in life, and we didn't know how to manage our money. And once we started to learn some of the basic concepts and then started to learn about the idea of financial independence, I would say that it served me well in the time that I discovered the concept because I was able to apply those things. And as I was already in my early 30s, I was able to rapidly increase my net worth and increase my monthly cash flow and save to catch up for all of the missed opportunities financially that I had in my 20s. And so, depending on where a person is coming from, whether it's that they're in debt or they're trying to make some radical changes to their own personal finance situation, or maybe they're just spendy and they're not used to savings. They may not be in a ton of debt, but maybe they're just trying to change their habits. I think that some of those old school concepts could serve them well to try to create those new habits for a period of time. So that might be 6 months, a year. It might be short term, but they don't necessarily have to do that until they reach their financial independence number. But there's still some value in some of those older concepts that we've touched on maybe in the frugality episode and some others.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, when we talk about the benefits of whether you want to go make more money or cut items from your budget or your expenses, we know that the benefit of cutting from your expenses really is going to be more worthwhile, at least initially on that short term, is because not only does it save you that money initially, but then you have the taxes and everything else. And so there are immediate benefits to that kind of more old school FI mentality of saying optimize where possible. But that's not to say that I don't think that you and I disagree with the fact that there is merit to the slow fi movement of saying, hey, I can take a job that is maybe more enjoyable, that I find feels less like a job, and work that for a longer period of time. If that sounds like a chance of success for you, great. Like, go do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you and I have both benefited by experiencing the two different eras of the fire movement that we've seen and the evolution over the last 10 years or so. And that it served me well early on to go through those, just head down and grind it out and try to save as much as I possibly could. And then as I was able to start to hear some of those conversations from the people who were regretting that they put themselves through that, the torture, that those difficult times, then I started to let my foot off the gas a little bit. And I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense to maybe to enjoy some of the experiences now. And if it takes me another year to reach my goal, that's okay. Because I always had a soft timeline anyway. I wasn't really sure when I was going to reach that goal, and I didn't have a date in mind or an age or anything like that. So hopefully people can see the benefits in both. There, you might be in a very difficult spot where you have to really buckle down and cut your expenses extremely and forego some of those experiences for a while. And then you can start to gradually bring them in once you've reached a more comfortable spot. And that could look different for each individual person.
Absolutely. So I know there are really no sacred cows in the fire movement, but what would you say are some really core tenets in quote unquote old school fi that you think really should never go away?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that just making sure that you're actively contributing, that you're trying to do your best to get to some of those max numbers if you can comfortably. So whether it's maxing out your 401k, your Roth IRA, definitely getting the employee match, all those kind of financial goals you should be striving for. But then it's the softer things like going back to changing careers that maybe that's something that we would want to shy away from. So I know a lot of times you heard about the individuals who just kept grinding and grinding and grinding at the job that was soul sucking and that didn't appreciate them. And we definitely want to move away from that and perhaps taking a lesser paying job. And that gets into the slow fi, but just how do we find that right balance so that we can potentially get there as quickly as we can within reason and not totally let our foot off the gas depending on what our circumstances are and what our goals are.
Yeah, I'm certainly a pedal to the metal type of person. But would you say the focus back then, and I say back then to refer to the era of when you and I found Phi, was it more about sacrifice or was it more about freedom?
It was sacrifice now for the freedom later.
Yeah, 100%. So, what about New Phi? How has the movement really shifted since we found it over 10 years ago?
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift towards how much can I save now that I don't necessarily have to keep saving, and it'll grow between whatever age I might want to take my foot off the gas, like you just gave as the metaphor, and it'll be available there for me, compounding, and by the time I'm at traditional retirement age. And that's actually great. I mean, I appreciate that philosophy as well. So I think that there's more of a focus on just trying to design your lifestyle around the concepts of financial independence and less of an emphasis on trying to get there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know that I have specifically asked you this, but I'll ask it to you now. As someone that is retired, what does your perfect day really look like?
Oh gosh, perfect day. I still wake up pretty early because Lori works, so we're up at 5 Monday through Thursday. We sleep in a little bit on the weekends, but we normally have coffee in the morning. So my morning routine is generally perfect as it is. We have a couple cups of coffee and just a slow start to our day. Then we will exercise. Usually we get started with that around 6:30, and we're getting ready for our day sometime in the 7 o'clock hour. For me, that looks a little different now. And from a perfect day standpoint, I really just like to try to take a somewhat of a slow start still, even beyond. So I could have the slow start early in the morning. I have the coffee, I have the exercise, and then I slow down even a little bit more after that and just have breakfast and try to think about what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. I usually have the middle part of the day where I'm trying to do a project of some sort. And you know this because usually you're reaching out to me like, "What are you doing today?" And I'm like, "I'm working on this rental house," or whatever the thing is for the day. And I spend the middle part of the day doing that. And generally, I'm kind of slowing down again in the afternoon. Maybe it's doing some of this quote unquote desk work that I don't like to do very much, but save that for the afternoon. And then the evenings, it's just kind of relaxing, trying to have a good dinner and spend some time either taking a walk or watching a good show on television. What does your perfect life look like as you're not quite there yet? What do you
Of
dream
course.
of?
Yes. Well, first, I need to shout out to my buddy Jeff. He's the head brewer over at Narrow Gauge Brewing Company, and he had brewed a beer back in the day called Desk Work. So maybe he'll have to bring that one back so that you can have a frosty one while you're doing your desk work and make it slightly more enjoyable. But I digress. Yes, my perfect day. I'm still actively working right now, so the idea of a perfect day isn't reality today. But what I think I want to move towards is I like waking up without an alarm clock. Now, that's not always possible, certainly currently, and waking up kind of later by your standards of 5 is always going to be true. With 3 small kids, I usually wake up to the sound of kids being awake and moving around. So that's kind of the beginning of my day. Right now, I'm not able to exercise in all the ways that I would like to, but in the future, that's what I envision my perfect day looking like is exercising, moving into having a healthy breakfast. Then in the morning, just kind of like you outlined, having some sort of structured time for some sort of quote unquote work. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily paid work, whether that's service, something creative, whether it's something like you and I are doing now, whether that's podcasting or that is writing or, doing work around the house, whatever that may be, that's what I envision that next time kind of being. Moving into lunchtime, and then in the afternoon, having more of kind of a block of time for either something, I quoted it more like a block of learning time. So whether that is learning a new language, learning a new skill, or alternatively making that social time. So whether that's with friends, that's with Dawn, that's kind of what that time is meant and set aside for. And then picking up my kids. My kids go to school close enough that I'm able to walk to school. So I think that that is great dual purpose work where not only am I meeting the objective of picking up my kids from school, but I get some exercise in, enjoy the outside air, etc. And then really focusing my time from there until dinner time is kid focused time, is that I want to be present as a father to them. Personally, what I think is that the thing that our kids want most from us is our attention. And so what's the biggest thing that gets in the way of that is things like this, or YouTube, or whatever else that would distract from our time, social media, etc. So I try and keep those things away and just really spend time with them in whatever way that they want to spend time with me. And then move into dinner. I have a goal of trying to learn to cook better, so maybe I'll have to get some tips from our buddy Doug Cunnington, the master chef, but trying to cook more and then ultimately get my kids to bed and spend time with Dawn. So I know that was very long winded, but I have spent some time actually reflecting on that as of late. So,
No, that's great. And I think your answer was a little bit better than mine. I like the idea of that learning block in there. And I try to use my morning, my slow start morning for that. But sometimes I lose sight of that. Just this morning, as an example, instead of reading a book or trying to get prepared for something, I was scrolling. And that's just such a waste of time. But I think that you are setting yourself up for success because you are spending so much time thinking about it, as you're, like you mentioned, that you're a little further away from that. But the more you think about it now, at least from my experience, the more time I spent thinking about it and daydreaming about it and writing it down, those dreams became reality. And I kind of had a blueprint set aside for this is how I think things are going to look, but also how I want them to look. And one thing that I have learned is that those things do change, and new things come about that you'll find an interest in and spend more time doing. And that's actually a good thing, because I think that if you had that same day, that perfect day, day after day after day, it would just become kind of routine and monotonous, and you'd start to want more, and it wouldn't necessarily satisfy some of the creativity or some of the connections that you might have not be including in that time frame. So I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it all out and find the right balance.
yeah, absolutely. So I'll throw out the straw man a little bit. So, do you think is NuFi just really an excuse to spend more money?
I kind of have that idea in the back of my mind a little bit, but I think it still has a lot of intentionality to it. And I don't think it's necessarily an excuse to spend more money, but it's an excuse to do things that are going to make your life better and more enjoyable than they would be if you just had your nose to the grindstone and were trying to avoid and get there as quickly as possible.
I agree with you. I think it is bringing the intentionality to our choices, and while those choices may cost more money, that may fly into the path of kind of our old school FI approach, right? Is if we say health is the most important thing, then we should be willing to spend our dollars to say, yes, this is important, and my choices are showing that this isn't just something that I say, my actions back up to that tenet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
Did old school Fi really underestimate the value of enjoying life along the way?
I guess it did, depending on the person, because there was those extremists that were like, I am going to cut every penny and try to forego as many experiences and keep working or have additional side hustles so that they were always busy with trying to earn more money and spend less money, that it probably did intentionally cut out some of those enjoyable things in life.
I'll use an example. Did your budget in your quote unquote old school Fi include concerts that you and Lori were interested in?
No, I don't think it included much entertainment at all. I remember back in the old days, our entertainment budget was something like $100 a month, and that was for a family of six. So we cut it to the bone, and of course things were a little cheaper back then, but we were trying to stretch that $100. That included going out to dinner, which we felt was a form of entertainment, and yeah, going to concerts and things like that. So we said no to a lot of things, and ultimately I think it served us well because it got to this point that we're in now where we can do all of those things. We're still young enough and healthy enough that we can experience those things. But we really started to, I would say, pull back around 2017. And so we really had about 3 or 4 years where we were really nose to the grindstone and trying to really pinch our pennies. And around 2017, I think, was whenever we really took our first trip with just the two of us and really didn't care too much about the cost. And we splurged a little bit with a rental car and a flight and all of those things that we wouldn't have dreamed of in the years leading up to that.
In summary, I would say that we really want to encourage blending the best of both worlds because while old school Fi certainly got us both there or is getting us there, and there certainly are merits, we would also encourage that there's no one right way to do this. Is that you want to make sure that you enjoy the journey all the way there, not just cut every penny to reach Fi as quick as possible. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts, Josh?
I completely agree. Yeah, there's no one size fits all, and the old flat five version had its benefits, and it served a lot of people pretty well. And I think the new concepts is also been a way to bring more people into the conversation for how to manage their money better. Not only the benefits of retiring early, but just the financial independence part of it has brought, I think, a much wider audience along because there were probably people that were somewhat opposed to the idea of just cutting their lifestyle and experiences to nothing in a short amount of time to get to a financial independence number. It probably turned a lot of people off. So the new versions, the Coast Fi, the Slow Fi, it's probably brought a lot more people into the mix.
Yeah, 100%. So, really want to recap. We think that there is a lot of merit in both kind of the traditional Fi as well as the slow Fi, the Coast Fi, etc. But we want you to maybe reflect on what camp do you lean towards? Are you more of a traditional Fi kind of mentality, or are you a slow Fi and Coast Fi, Barista Fi really type of person where you found that job that maybe doesn't pay the same as that soul crushing job that maybe you had before, but you enjoy every day that you wake up and you're going to work. So we would encourage everyone to really think about that.
Or are you Wi-Fi like me, where your wife still works but you don't?
That's right. That's what I aspire to, Josh. And I know Don knows this. So maybe the last thing that we can do here is move into our lightning round. And so we'll have some fun with this. So rice and bean dinners or craft coffee budgeted in?
Mm, let's do craft coffee budgeted in.
Well, as a
How about you?
non-coffee drinker, that flies in the face of that for me. However, Dawn does like her Starbucks every once in a while. So, how about retiring at 35 and living lean, or retiring at 55 with more comfort?
Man, for me, this might be not the answer that you would expect, but I think it's retiring lean at 35 because I think there's an opportunity that you can do something else later. Whether so that might be a form of coast pie, but you never know what opportunity is going to come your way for something new or something different. And if you are continuing to work until you're 55 just to be more comfortable, you could miss out on an opportunity.
Sure. And I think clearly this is one more year syndrome showing up because I'm like, where's my retiring at 45 and comfortably? No, I think I do fall in the camp of retiring at 35 and living lean as well. Does give you that optionality that really is priceless.
How about this one, Elliot? How about bike everywhere or hybrid car?
Well, I will get face punched by Mr. Money Mustache, but St. Louis isn't the most bikeable city, so I would have to take hybrid car. How about you?
Yeah, and I live way out in the suburbs, so my bike ride to your house would probably take me about 8 hours.
I agree. Maybe one more. How about geo arbitrage in Thailand or stay put in the burbs?
I think for me, it's stay put in the burbs, and that's probably because I don't have as much sense of adventure, at least outside of the US. So I would probably stay put. Your answer is probably different. How about you?
Yeah, Thailand, I don't know, but yeah, this is one where I certainly jump back and forth with. Certainly having a larger family, this makes this answer more complex, but yeah, you catch me on any day. I could be geo arbitraging to Thailand, or I could be staying put in the burbs. So I'll toss this one to a question mark. But yeah. Well, Josh, I've really enjoyed our conversations as always. I would encourage our listeners to like, subscribe on whether you're on YouTube or on a podcast player of your choice. Leave us that review if you feel comfortable. We really do appreciate all the feedback. Anything left for the audience, Josh?
Nothing other than thanks for listening to us.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.